Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news as the excuses roll in. Some of them, I would say, quite incredible and unbelievable how Manchester United are trying to blame shift away from what is, without doubt, self-inflicted wounds. We're in a bad position. We're going to talk about some of the things that John Murtaugh, Richard Arnold and Sir Jim Radcliffe have been quoted as saying. So very big statements coming in from there. Also want to pick up on this news that West Ham will put a new bid in for Harry Maguire. Another injury to a different player. Casemiro has picked up an ankle injury on international duty. Not surprised. Too many games for footballers and injuries are starting to mount up. But a few other bits as well to talk about this morning. But the first place to start off with is the excuses. Very interesting quote I want to talk about with Sir Jim Radcliffe. A lot of people feel that Sir Jim Radcliffe is going to win the race for Manchester United. I don't know whether that's the case or not, but the quote, and I don't know where it's come from, I've actually got it from a Barcelona outlet. Sir Jim Radcliffe talking about how the offer he put on the table for Barcelona gives you a real insight to what he's putting on the offer on the table for Manchester United. He basically offered Barcelona a couple of billion quid for a small percentage in the club and to fund the new stadium. Hence, this is going to be massively appealing to the Glazers for somebody to take a small percentage, give them $1 billion or two, and also pay for the new stadium. Of course, the debt doesn't go. So, look, it's a very worrying statement, and we'll talk about that. What happened last night, Mark? Says Tao. I had a very good night. That's why my throat's a bit unusual. I had a little bit drunk, but no, I just felt it was international break. I had an impromptu invitation, and I took it. To be honest with you. Anyway, Jim will fix it, says Paul Irwin. Well, yeah, look how Jim will fix it ended up. Yeah, and I think enough said there if you've been watching the recent drama with Steve Coogan portraying Jimmy Savile. Anyway, enough of that. Let's get into the show. I want to start off with the mess that Manchester United is, the Ten Hag excuses that have come out, not from Ten Hag. This is not going to be an anti-Ten Hag thing in any sense, shape or form, but it's the excuses that Manchester United have delivered that I find, remarkable in the sense of, how can you be basically saying that injuries and transfers haven't gone to plan. I find it incredible. So let's hit some of these quotes. Grumpy Bridge says, Dan, not grumpy at all. In a really happy, good mood, actually. Had a great night last night. Off to watch a bit of football today. Local, absolutely fantastic. I might even do a watch along tonight for the fight, and I might even do a draft, an EAFC draft this afternoon. So no, I'm in a good mood. Not too many games, too many burgers for Casemiro. I like the title. Stop making excuses, says Rory. Rory, can I just say you have made contributions in the past, but I will give you a final warning. I don't take that on board for Luke Shaw, and I don't take it on for Casemiro. In fact, I don't take it on for any footballer being called fat. It's 2023, mate. It's childish, it's silly, and you wouldn't say it to his face because he'd knock you spark out. So, in fact, he'd probably 2-foot your face. And take a red card happily for it. So, calling people fat on a live chat in 2023, grow the fuck up. Seriously, it's just, it doesn't add anything to the conversation. Rory doesn't rate Casemiro. Well done. Why don't you get your hipsters on TikTok to do some clips of his game last night where he didn't pick up the runner or he played a bad pass? As of sold, I wouldn't shit on one of them TikTok compilations because I can do a compilation of a match with Kevin De Bruyne where he was man of the match and make him look shit because I've got 90 minutes to find a few bad passes or, a little bit of a jog when he could have been sprinting. You are being manipulated, Rory. All these little hipsters and their little compilations, they are taking the piss. You may as well follow the Pied Piper and jump off a cliff. You are being manipulated. Use your own mind and realise that anybody can clip anybody up. Anyone can find a stat that makes anyone look shit or great. And United fans are brilliant at it. So just be very wary of that. Anyway, let's talk about what John Murtaugh and... look, I'm going to start off with John Murtaugh. Now, this is coming from the fan forum. God knows when this happened. The quotes came out yesterday. So John Murtaugh and Richard Arnold have spoken to the Manchester United fan forum, of which I'm not a massive fan of anyway. It only includes match-going fans, season ticket holders and representatives from match-going fans, which for me is great. Obviously, that's the life of the club. Paying ticket Manchester United fans, home and away, they are the life of the club. But they are a very small percentage of the club. They don't involve people externally. They don't involve people from around the globe who have similar, better, or just as good opinions. So I'm not a massive fan of the fan forum and how Man United run it. I think it's dated, archaic, and exclusive. I've said that before. However, I don't know when this fan forum's taken place. Sometimes the notes from the fan forum don't even get released for 2 or 3 weeks after the actual meeting, which is just incredible. Absolutely incredible. The worse than the PGMOL. But anyway, this is what John Murtaugh had to say. The mixed results achieved so far can partly be explained by the fact that 16 first-team players have been injured or unavailable for periods since the start of the season. That represents 2/3 of the strength and means that Erik ten Hag hasn't been able to choose his best 11 once this season. Fortunately, some injured players are starting to return, which should make a difference. It's 2023. John Murtaugh, go out for a drink with Rory because your explanations of things are absolutely incredibly bad. You are sat there talking to fans on a forum saying that injuries are the problem for Manchester United's poor form this season. I find that absolutely incredible. I'm nearly breaking up here. I'm not, my throat's a bit sore. I find that absolutely incredible that our director of football is sat talking to fans and saying, we're having a bad season because of injuries. And guess what? It gets better than this. United are apparently searching for reasons why they're picking up so many injuries. They think it might be due to the volume of games last season and the World Cup. That's Manchester United. That's the club we look to as fans, as mere mortals. We look up to and say, they will know what they're doing. And yet, in 2022, August, over a year ago, we sat on this channel and said, this season will burn out. We do not have a big enough squad to compete on 4 fronts and a World Cup. That was August 2022. We are now in a situation where it is October 2023, over a year later, and the director of football and the club are looking into why we have an injury crisis. And yet every United fan with a brain over a year ago was saying, we don't have a squad to get through last season. It will kill them. And lo and behold, it has killed them. And now players like Casemiro, like Bruno Fernandes, like Marcus Rashford, like Martinez, like Varane, and others are either getting injured, Luke Shaw, are either getting injured or are out of form and look knackered. What a surprise. And this is now being delivered as an excuse where we as fans are meant to go, wow, you can't blame the club. You can't blame Man United for this. It's a shock. Nobody saw it coming that we would have an injury crisis and our players would be running on empty. I mean, it's absolutely incredible that they even need to put, a brief out to journalists that they're looking into why they're getting so many injuries. I mean, it was bloody inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. And I don't really, I don't buy into the excuse, is what I'm saying. I think it's incredible, unbelievable, and scary that the director of football there is now pointing to injuries for the bad start to the season. And I agree, it's a factor in why we've had a bad start to the season. However, the style of play is crap. The chemistry is crap. But it was absolutely inevitable that we were going to struggle with injury and fatigue after such a short summer, after such a relentless season last year. And the fact that United think that they've invented the wheel by going, we're looking into why we're getting so many injuries, and we think it might be to do with a hard season last year and the World Cup being in the middle of the season. No shit, Sherlock. Absolutely incredible that they're comfortable with the director of football of Manchester United actually speaking those words publicly and being quoted publicly on something that everybody knew over a year ago. Glazers remind me of that creepy guy in The Lord of the Rings that keeps poisoning Theoden from Rohan, says Alexander. Also, it ain't rocket science as football fanatics. Well, let's move on to the next incredible excuse, because then you move towards what Richard Arnold said in that fan forum. And he said that, oh no, just a minute, this is another quote from John Murtaugh. We're also looking at why we've had so many injuries to improve for prevention in the future. Some of them are impact injuries like Kobe and Ahmad, who are unpredictable. Others are muscular and could reflect the volume of matches played over the past year, including the World Cup. Unbelievable. Please get a decent... Get whoever the new owner is, even if it's to Jim, get a director of football who knows what they're bloody talking about and doesn't put quotes out like that where he thinks he's being clever and everyone knew the answer a year ago. It's terrifying. I'm not having it that United can use injuries as the excuses for this season, basically. They are excuses being put out to protect... United are brilliant at protecting themselves. Richard Arnold has basically thrown John Murtaugh under the bus. I'll talk about that in a moment. John Murtaugh is basically using injuries as an excuse. And obviously they want to keep Ten Hag in a job, so they're giving him excuses because they don't want to sack Ten Hag for financial reasons as much as football reasons. They can't afford to sack another manager. So they need to find excuses. And there'll be somebody somewhere thinking, how do we spin this shit season into a way where we all keep our jobs, including Eric? I know, let's say that if we didn't have any injuries, we would be winning the league. And actually, the biggest enemy to the football club is injuries, and it's not our fault, and nobody can see it was going to happen. I would just say it's not excusable. It's not excusable in the slightest. If I was director of football or I was CEO of Manchester United in May, I would have been saying to the Glazers, we need to get the players that Ten Hag wants in. We need to freshen up this squad. It is going to die next season. It's absolutely inevitable. We need to be better prepared. We've gone into this season thinking that a group of players from last year who played 3 times a week for probably 9 months were going to be able to go and do it for another 9 months. And then we're like shocked when most of them are out injured till Christmas. I mean, if you do something enough, you're going to get sore. Let me just say that. We've all been there. And ultimately, that's what's happened with United. And they don't understand that by working something relentlessly, it's got sore. And they're like, wow, I couldn't... No, who would have thought that? Who would have thought if I put my batteries into my... Not that. If I put my batteries into my, switch or whatever it is, I don't know what people... Torch. And I keep using my torch, it would run out. I thought it would carry on forever. Ridiculous. Anyway, this is what Richard Arnold had to say. John Murtaugh and his this is. I think this is typical Richard Arnold. Typical protecting himself and trying to make out he does a good job. So let's listen to what Richard Arnold's got to say, because I think this is throwing John Murtaugh under the bus. He says, John Murtaugh and his team have put in place a clear long-term squad strategy, which guides our decisions at each transfer window. We knew there would be transition, but I share the group's frustration and the fans because the results have not lived up to the expectations so far. So basically what Richard Arnold is saying is John Murtaugh has got the responsibility for transfers and it's not living up to the expectations. You basically just put a public statement out, Richard, saying your director of football is shit. So your job is to sack him, which you won't do. Because United don't get rid of anybody in high-powered positions because it's all a job for the boys, isn't it? But you have just publicly said that the director of football has failed, that they've got the strategy for transfers and it's failing, and therefore he's failed. And at a proper football club, that would lead to the dismissal of that person and a better person coming in. Because it's not about to get any better, Richard. The transfer window is gone. And there won't be any money spent in January. So it's not going to get... This season's not going to suddenly get any better. We're not going to compete with Man City or Arsenal or Liverpool. So you've just outed your director of football publicly, whether you think you have or you haven't. But that's the incompetence of you. And this is why you shouldn't speak publicly, because you always contradict yourself, as your public statement about Mason Greenwood did. So let's not forget Richard Arnold's role at Manchester United. He is the CEO of this football club. And when he says, John Murtaugh's recruitment hasn't gone as well as they wanted it to, and it's his responsibility, but you're the CEO who has basically, over the last 8 months, presided over a big, festering, stinking, steaming turd of decisions that you took responsibility for. And whatever side of the fence people are with the Mason Greenwood debacle, you were going to bring him back, and then you wasted all summer on that decision and had to get rid of him at the end of the window. So your timing and decision making is inefficient, and you should have lost your job, actually. You should have lost your job because of the Mason Greenwood thing, not because of Mason Greenwood. I'm not including Mason Greenwood in this. That discussion has been had many a time. I'm talking about a CEO that completely misread the room and was going to overrule everybody to bring Mason Greenwood back, and then realised what a shitstorm it was and had to go back on his decision. And I think he should have lost his job on such an important thing. Many people lose their job for less than that. he should have lost his job. And he's still there deflecting and protecting himself. And I tell you what, I hear a lot of people who say that Richard Arnold's really good at his job. He's very thorough. People I respect and trust have said to me, you know what, I've worked with Richard Arnold. He's a really, really thorough, get him in a room and he can control the room. He's really, straight off the hip, good leadership skills. And I said, I've never met the guy. And I'd love to meet him. I'd love to have a chat with him because I think he's bloody useless at his job. And but it surprises me how many people say he's actually a really good guy and he knows what he's on about. I don't think he's a good guy for Manchester United. He's probably a good guy in real life. This is not about being personal. This is about what's best for Manchester United. I don't think he's a Manchester United fan. I don't think he knows football, and I don't think he knows this football club. And I think he's a bad CEO. And I don't really like a CEO sort of mentioning a director of football as much as I think that director of football is bad and basically deflecting. If you're the captain of a ship, and if you're the CEO of Manchester United, you should take the bloody responsibility because you are the guy who makes the decisions. And we all know that. So yeah, some very interesting stuff in there and deflection and excuses. But the bottom line is there is no excuse. And that's what I mean. It's unbelievable. There are no excuses for Manchester United. The injury thing everybody could see coming. And the decisions that were made in the summer have presented us with this season. I mean, what would you say are the big reasons that Manchester United are failing this season? Kevin's just gifted 10 memberships. You're a legend, Kevin. No depth in the squad means minutes for players and therefore likelihood of more injuries, says Stephen. I love United stand, Mark, but sorry, it's got to be India versus Pakistan today, says Yash. You do you, mate. You do you. If that's what rocks your boat. Mark, what are your thoughts on Maguire telling I am not here to sit and play a month? Well, look, Kevin, I think I want to talk about the Maguire thing because I think subtly, Man United have been mugged off by Maguire as well. And I'll talk about that in a moment. When will the Glazers leave? Will you open the champagne, says Partek? And how many years will leave? Will you open? I've done that one. Okay, fine. But, when I look at why Man United are having a bad season, I don't think it's exclusive to players being injured. We'd have a better defence with Luke Shaw and Wan-Bissaka back and Martinez and Varane back, but we didn't start the season well with them fit. I mean, I remember the Wolves game. We didn't start the season very well, and that's just the defence. The attack is the problem. There's no chemistry in the attack. We're not creating chances. We're not scoring goals. So I don't think injuries are an excuse. Look at where the injuries are. Our front six is fine. There's no issue with the front six. Bruno's fit, Mount's now fit, Casemiro's been fit, Amrabat's available, Eriksen's fit, McTominay is fit, Anthony's back now, Sancho's suspended, Garnacho's fit, Rashford's fit, Martial is fit, Højlund's been fit. We've got loads of options in the attack, and defensively, yeah, there's a bit of a crisis at the back. We haven't got a fit left back, but I don't think injuries are the problem. I think the problem is that Erik ten Hag didn't actually get the transfers that he wanted. I think that the centre-back was massive, and it was meant to be Kim Min-jae. And I think that the midfield wasn't constructed in the way that he wanted it to be. I think he wanted Rabiot. I think he probably wanted another striker. And I think that, pre-season was just an absolute mess because we didn't have the players that he wanted to work with. And it ended up being a trip to Disneyland. So I think there's a lot of reasons why Man United have started the season so sluggish, and I don't think it's because of injury. And I think one of the main reasons is because we just didn't see this coming because we're not that sort of football club. Purses, I think you should be a bit softer on Maguire. I think you should go for a jog and piss off, really. I'm sorry to be very blunt, but we don't even talk about Maguire that much, mate. He gets spoken about when he goes on England duty because England give him a platform that Man United don't. He plays minutes and he's allowed to do press conferences, so he talks a lot. We don't talk about Harry Maguire much on here. In fact, the only reason we're talking about Harry Maguire here is because a story came out yesterday lunchtime from a journalist saying that West Ham are considering a fresh approach for Harry Maguire in January. Should his lack of game time continue, Man United will not stand in the way. Well, look, this is yet another reason why Manchester United are failing, because there are players at that football club. If you are Pep Guardiola, then you will not have players at your football club that you don't want to be there. They're gone in the summer. Donny van der Beek, Scott McTominay, Harry Maguire, Anthony Martial, Jadon Sancho are all players that Ten Hag would like to have got rid of in the summer. All 5 of them are still at the club. Now, fortunately, Scott McTominay scored 2 goals last week. Harry Maguire did get an assist. But they are players that Ten Hag would have moved on to bring other players in and raise money. Some of them he was more desperate to get rid of than others. But it's another embarrassing thing that some people may not have read or taken note of that happened this week. As soon as he lands for England duty, Harry Maguire's doing a big fucking War and Peace interview. I mean, I don't know why. I don't really know why. I would imagine England and Southgate. I mean, look, the great thing about Southgate is useless. Absolutely useless. Last night, people were booing Jordan Henderson. What happens after the game? Southgate comes out again. Oh, why are they booing an England player? Why are they booing an England player? And I was laughing. I was in the pub laughing at it because I was like, this is why Southgate's bloody useless, and this is why the media in this country are absolute morons at times. Because when Harry Maguire got booed away for England against Scotland, a lot of that was just pantomime. And it happens. It used to happen in the 80s and the 90s. It used to happen to Man United players at Wembley. Gary Neville used to get booed. David Beckham used to get booed. But the press reacted like Harry Maguire was the only player in football history to get booed playing for England. And it was in Scotland as well, you know, one of the most rivalry games there is. And Gareth Southgate blew it up into something bigger than it ever was and blamed Man United fans for it, which is incredible because we weren't talking about Harry Maguire all season because he doesn't bloody play. Jordan Henderson gets booed. Gareth Southgate's at it again. I don't understand why people are booing. How that going to help? And you think this is Gareth Southgate would be a very good manager for Manchester United because his incompetence and stupidity on things that are glaringly obvious are very, very consistent with the way United's run. The reason Jordan Henderson and Harry Maguire are getting booed, Gareth Southgate, is because of you. Because you keep picking players that don't deserve to get picked for their national team because they're playing in joker leagues or they're not playing football at all. That is what they are doing, Gareth. It's called a democracy and it's called having the right to disagree with your terrible decisions. You don't run a dictatorship, Gareth Southgate, and not everyone's going to cheer your terrible footballing knowledge. And that's what it comes down to, isn't it? But back to Manchester United, back to the United stand. Has Rasmus surprised you at all since arriving? Also, people need to stop comparing him to Højlund, says Emil. Well, yeah, it's very lazy. I really like Rasmus Højlund. Actually, I was asked about him the other day. I was in London. I did a podcast and they did a little question on Højlund. And they wanted a soundbite. And I said, at this moment in time, I believe that in 3 years' time, Rasmus Højlund could be one of the best strikers in Europe and therefore one of the best strikers in the world. But that's in 3 years' time. I don't think people realise that his breakout season was last year and he's still ridiculously raw and being developed. There is some takeover news, John. I'll talk about that in a moment. But you know what? In the interview that Harry Maguire did for England this week, if I was Man United, and I don't know whether anybody else picked up on this, if I was Man United, I would be fuming with that interview that he gave. Because you know what he said about the move to West Ham? He said it never got as far as it could have got because Man United and West Ham couldn't agree. And West Ham's a big club. And obviously, I just want to play football, so I'll have to look at things. Maguire came out of that really well because it was sort of like, you know, I just want to play football. And if the move to West Ham had happened because I'm not going to play for Man United, then I would have gone. But Man United and West Ham couldn't agree a deal. So that makes Maguire look good because he got an assist against Brentford. He played quite well. He does an interview for England where he says, I just want to play football. I want to play at Man United, but if I'm not playing, I'll get a move. But it wasn't my fault that the West Ham Man United deal didn't happen. And it just makes Murtaugh and Arnold look bloody idiots because so many people have said to me this week, well, you can't blame Maguire. He would have gone to West Ham, but Man United ruined the deal. He's basically just said that on England duty. But what Maguire has done, he's played a brilliant PR piece that makes him look not as bad, and it makes Man United look absolutely rubbish. And that's a current Man United player doing that. Now, Man United may not be clever enough to realise what Maguire's done there, but I can see what he's done. He's deflected any incompetence on himself onto the club and said, look, it never got as far as people think. I know what happened with the Harry Maguire to West Ham deal. I told you in the summer, and I'll tell you right now. And if Harry Maguire or anyone else wants to come out and say I'm wrong, please do. West Ham bid for Harry Maguire around £30 million. Manchester United accepted that bid. Harry Maguire is on £200,000 a week. West Ham could only pay him about £100,000 a week. Harry Maguire's got 2 years left on his contract and was like, I'll go to West Ham, but I'm not taking a 50% pay cut. So who is paying the 200 grand a week that I would be getting for the next 2 years? West Ham said, well, we're paying £30 million for you, Harry. We're not paying that. We can't afford that. We may as well give you 200 grand a week if we're going to give you the money. We can only afford 100 grand a week. And United said, we're not paying you off for the next 2 years. Therefore, the deal collapsed. So West Ham couldn't afford the 200 grand a week, but they could afford the 30 million. Harry Maguire said, I'm not taking a pay cut. And Man United said, well, we're not paying you your wages for the next 2 years at West Ham. So that's why the deal didn't happen. Now, some people would say Harry Maguire is greedy and should go to play football for his England place. Some people would say, well, he has got a contract where he's on double the wages that West Ham are going to pay him. There's got to be some level of compensation. Ultimately, it comes down to money. What's my stance? I don't sit on the fence. At the time in the summer, I was desperate for Maguire to go, and my feeling was if he wants to, I hope he loses his place at England then, because if he's going to sit on the bench and take his wages at United, he doesn't deserve to play for England. That was my stance because I wanted him to go so we could replace him. On reflection, I can see his side that he's on 200 grand a week, and that's his wage. And why should he, take a 50% pay cut to help Man United out? I do see that. The big problem is, and Richard Arnold talks about recruitment, and Richard Arnold talks about John Murtaugh, but Richard Arnold signs off these ridiculous wages. You can't throw it all onto John Murtaugh. When John Murtaugh says, I've bought you Jadon Sancho, but the wages are 350 grand a week, Richard Arnold signs that off. That's why we can't sell players. Hi, Mark. Don't you think United should have won some of the games with the players that are available? Yes, perhaps I do. United and incompetence again, offering stupid wages for mediocre players has come back to bite us, says Tom. Exactly. Hello, everyone, says Bright. Mark, you're the one spending a whole hour hating on Maguire. You're a big boy spending your time hating him, but get mad when pundits hate on foreign players. Samson, thank you very much for your super chat. And it's always nice, even on a weekend, to know that idiots don't take time off. Nobody's hating on anybody. We haven't spent a whole hour talking about Harry Maguire. We've been live for 27 minutes and we spoke about Harry Maguire for about 5 minutes. And we've just explained how he's quite rightly exposed that the club is incompetent and how you can sort of see his side of things not wanting to take a 50% pay cut. So, Samson, on absolutely no level have you made any sense apart from winning the award of exposing yourself in front of 10,000 people to be an absolute uneducated Zoom. So well done, and thank you for your contribution today. Thank you very much to Kevin, who gifted 10 memberships as well. Don't forget that I still have to talk to you about what Sir Jim Radcliffe said. Now, this is interesting. Some of you may have seen this yesterday, but I found this very, very interesting. This is a comment from Sir Jim Radcliffe. Now, a lot of people are starting to get concerned. I need to talk about Casemiro's injury as well. A lot of people are starting to get concerned about the future of Manchester United, whether Ineos and Sir Jim are winning the race and whether they're going to buy Manchester United. Well, this is what Sir Jim Radcliffe had to say in June. We had an interesting conversation with Juan Laporta of Barcelona. We proposed offering 2 to 3 billion in euros for 50% of the club and signing a contract with them to never sell our shares. And we would renew the Nou Camp. Now, that was in June, and as we know with Sir Jim Radcliffe, he's all over the place when it comes to buying clubs, but he has exposed what he's all about. He tried to buy Chelsea. That was the best offer apparently for Chelsea. They didn't take it. He's tried to buy half of Barcelona. That was the best offer for Barcelona. They decided to take on more debt and levers than do that. It's really interesting, isn't it, that Sir Jim Radcliffe apparently had the best bid for Chelsea, but they went with Todd Boehly. It's really interesting that he had a really good offer on the table for Barcelona and they chose to pull levers and sell parts of their football club and piled themselves into very dangerous debt rather than take Sir Jim Radcliffe. I think there's a warning here. Chelsea and Barcelona have refused this guy twice and gone with what you could say are more risky ownership models. Manchester United could be third time lucky for Sir Jim, but it concerns me what that future would be because 2 clubs have already turned him down. And yet, Manchester United and the Glazers are potentially looking at Sir Jim and going, this is what we want to do. But I think that people would quite rightly say, why are you talking about a Sir Jim Radcliffe quote from June? Because in that quote, he says, I tried to buy half of Barcelona to renew their stadium and agreed to never sell my shares. This is a guy who basically just wants to own something of a football club. I mean, who buys half of a football club and says, I'll never sell my shares? I mean, that is scary in itself. But you think about that. He has gone to United already and said, I'll buy 50% of the club. Apparently, he's now gone down to 25%. This guy is desperate. He's desperate to get hold of a football club. And I think there's probably a very similar offer on the table. I will buy a percentage of this football club. You can stay in control and I will fund, a new Old Trafford. That is not going to help Manchester United. It is not. We will still be under control of the Glazers. He will just be a shareholder who is, has a relationship with them, and hope. I personally think this is what I think. I think if Qatar bought Man United, there's no guarantee that we'd be successful. Man City are still in the game. Saudi Arabia are very rich. They own Newcastle. There could be other people who buy other clubs. And it could just be that the Premier League becomes a league with about 10, 15 multi-billionaire owners who sort of cancel each other out. And it's a more level playing field than it is at the moment with Man City. That could happen. They could take over and we could win the title in the next 5 years, because I think it will take that amount of time to right the wrongs at this football club, even if you have a billionaire owner. But what Qatar will do is clear the debt, own all of the football club, and invest in infrastructure and everything to rebuild the football club in a very secure position where they're not under debt, they haven't got multiple owners, and the drive is to make Man United one of the greatest clubs in the world. That will happen under Qatar. Whether you're comfortable with that, whether you're comfortable with the Qatari ownership, that's down to you. But the actual model of a Qatari ownership will be similar to Man City. It'll be similar to Newcastle. Infrastructure, driven to succeed, no debt, wholly owned by Qatar. If we get bought by Sir Jim, I think that this is whatever percentage Sir Jim can get with the Glazers, with a long-term vision to increase the value of the club to 10, 15 billion pounds and then sell it at a huge profit. I think that is the end game for Sir Jim and the Glazers, and I think that is why it's an appealing offer to the Glazers, because they want to work with Sir Jim Radcliffe to increase the value of this football club so that they can all piss off in a few years' time and make a lot of money out of it. I think that Qatar, it's a sporting project to compete against the likes of Abu Dhabi and Saudi Arabia. And I think that Sir Jim, it is a money-making exercise with the Glazers to, double your money and move on from Manchester United. His longer-term plan might be to acquire shares from the Glazers, but the debt's still there. It's a business model. It's still a business model where I think it's a sporting model if somebody buys us who's a billionaire. It scares me to death that Sir Jim might do a deal and keep the Glazers in charge. Club is dead, no future, and out of the fans. It's frightening, says Ian. Well, I think that a Qatari-type ownership is a step into the unknown, but it's an optimistic one from a team perspective. I think the Sir Jim Glazer relationship is a depressing one, and it's a step into where we've probably already been. Just a little bit more news as well. I'll tell you what, this has been next to me all the time, and I forgot to say it. So we're on tour again. The Christmas show is on the 11th of December. It's our Manchester Christmas show. We've got giveaways, prizes, quizzes, interactive, special guests. It's going to be a cracking night. United Stand Christmas show. Make sure you get your tickets while you can. It is the weekend. You've got the time to do it. Scan the QR code to go straight to the website to get them. You can do that on your camera phone, or you can go through the link in the description. It's also in the live chat as well. Looking forward to seeing you there, especially after my night last night. Big shout out to the Masons in Solihull. I didn't realise England were actually playing last night, so I was down having a few pints, and it was quite busy with people watching the football. It's a Friday night anyway, but had a picture with quite a few people, had a few chats with people as well. So looking forward to that with the people that matter the most, you, in Manchester on the 11th of December. Get your tickets. It's going to be a fantastic, the not so silent night United Stand Christmas special in Manchester. Can't wait to see you. And get your tickets while you can, actually, because when I announce who the special guest is, you're going to go, I wish I'd got those tickets. But It's not finalised yet. There's 2 or 3 options. 2 out of the 3 are really good. One of them, yeah, we probably would just say no, but it's going to be good. Right, let me talk to you about Casemiro. Casemiro went off injured with an ankle injury yesterday for Brazil against Venezuela. I'm not here to talk about Casemiro as a footballer, because I think he's a really good footballer. Captain of Brazil, one of the greatest holding midfielders the game has seen in recent years, and certainly of the last 10 years. Let people write him off, let them spend an hour or two sat in their bedrooms clipping up clips of misplaced passes or this, that and the other. I've told you I can do that with Pirlo. I can do it with Zidane. I can spend an hour in my bedroom clipping up Zidane, making him look shit. It's an agenda, and reminds me a lot of the old school media, really. When I was growing up and there was no internet, there was no internet, there was no mobile phones. You'd buy a paper, and whoever was writing in that paper could basically manipulate a nation. If they didn't like a certain manager or they didn't like a certain player, they had a dictatorship, because there was no internet, there was no phone. So your only way of reading things was through the newspapers. So these journalists were very powerful. I think these hipsters who clip up compilations, have you ever noticed how it always comes from a place where they're right? It never comes from a place of a balanced opinion. It's always like, this is why De Gea's shit and we need to get Costa. This is why Casemiro's finished. This is why Varane's the problem passing out from the back. And then what I always love the most is that when they're doing these De Gea clips or these Varane clips about why they can't pass out from the back, I know it started from a mind that's probably never really played any football. And I'm not talking played the game. I mean, down the park, touching grass, playing with their mates on a Saturday afternoon or five-a-side. So they've got no concept of what a football game is like. But more importantly, that what they've actually done is, and this is always what makes me laugh the most, is when De Gea's making a mistake or a bad kick, or Varane doesn't pass out from the back properly, or Casemiro misses a tackle or a pass, you'll see one game it'll be against Brentford from last year, one game it'll be Brentford this year, one game it'll be Spurs, and suddenly you go, so basically they've gone through about 900 minutes of matches. It's not even from the same game. 900 minutes of matches, and found 5 or 6 misplaced passes in 900 minutes. And you go, there's probably over 300 good passes in there. And you've got to be, as I said yesterday, you've got to be very, very careful about this sort of stuff, because it's manipulation. It's one person's agenda clipped up with footage they shouldn't even be bloody using, because they haven't got the rights. And it'll be funny when they do get taken down. But the footage that's not even theirs, manipulated into their own little movie to the masses as to why a player's not good enough. I was thinking about this last night. I could make Erling Haaland look shite. If you gave me, well, I could just do it. In fact, there's probably one on YouTube. I could make Erling Haaland look shit, because I've seen him miss sitters. I could make the best striker in the world look shit. I could compile probably a minute's worth of bad touches and misses and go, the world's shittest striker. And if you didn't know he was the best striker in the world, if we could AI his face to somebody that didn't look like Erling Haaland, and I said, this is the world's shittest striker, look at him, you'd all go, yeah, he's fucking rubbish. It's just manipulation. It's manipulation. So you've got to be very careful about that. Judge players on your own eyes. Watch football. Touch grass. But look, Casemiro injury, in a way, it probably doesn't matter, because you can't be a hypocrite. You can't say that Casemiro was shit against Brentford and deserved to get subbed off at half-time, which he did, and then moan when he's injured, because I've heard people saying Casemiro's finished, that he should be dropped. So I would say, well, surely the injury isn't a bad thing. Now, to me, I think it's a really bad thing, because I still think Casemiro is a massively important player for us. But, maybe he will be back for the Sheffield United game. Maybe he will be out for 6 weeks. Maybe he will need an operation. The scary thing at the moment is, I don't feel as a United fan, and I'm sure you don't feel as a United fan, that we're going to get lucky. Sometimes you see these players on international duty, they get a knock and they're back playing for you a few days later. The way United are going at the moment, it wouldn't surprise me if it's an ankle injury that's going to keep him out for 6 months, because everything just seems to be going wrong. But what I will say is that it should not come as a surprise, because these players have played way too much football over the last year, and they're going to keep picking up injuries. And I know it's very easy to blame it on the Man United fitness department and the new doctor, etc., etc. But if a player is playing 100 minutes every 3 days, which is what they're doing at the moment because these referees are adding time on, then they're going to get tired and they're going to get injured. And, you know, it's a long time since I was playing football like regularly, but I remember regularly at the end of the season, and any footballer you talk to has always got an injury, by the way. There's no footballer out there that feels fine. Certainly not by Christmas. You're always carrying an injury, because a lot of injuries, you just can't get rid of them. You know, I have to shoot with my left foot at the moment because there's something wrong with my right foot. I've not broken it, but there's just something wrong with my right foot. And if I ever do anything with it, it just hurts, and it hurts again for 2 weeks. So I try not to do anything with my right foot. But footballers will always have a bad ankle, you know, a bad shin, knees not quite right. You know, this is normal. It's normal for footballers to be carrying injuries and soreness, because it's competitive and impactive sport. The more you do it, the more you're going to get injuries. And United know this, but they just walked into this season thinking they were going to have a miracle again. If they were guaranteed to play the next 10 games in a row, which 2 wingers would you choose, says Grant. Good question. What about you in the chat? I'd like to see Garnacho given a run. I really would like to. And one thing that I always liked about... One thing Van Gaal did that I liked is that at the start of one season, he gave Januzaj 4 starts in a row, and he blew it. And he never gave it again. But he gave him them 4 games starting games in a row. What I don't like is where somebody deserves a start, especially a young player. You start them in one game and it's like, that didn't work. It sort of happened to Pellistri. Pellistri started a couple of games like Bayern Munich, and there was one other one. Didn't quite work. That's your chance. And I think, you know, Anthony came into the club and started, you know, basically every game. You know, Mason Mount's come into the club and he starts every game where he's fit. So I would like to see Garnacho given, you know, a run of 10 games at the start off the left-hand side. Right-hand side, I'm not opposed to putting Rashford on the right-hand side because he's got a nice cross on him, but I'd probably go Garnacho and Anthony if I'm being absolutely honest at the moment. I think the form of Rashford would preclude him from getting another 10 games for me. I think he needs to certainly drop to the bench, especially against a team like Sheffield United, which I think we will beat anyway. But I think the temptation is going to be that Ten Hag took off Rashford and Mount on the 60th minute, and we won the game without them. I always said this, the international break could be their saviour, because I think with a 2-week gap, he'll go back to his favourites against Sheffield United and think, Sheffield United are crap. This could be the game where Mount and Rashford score some goals and get their confidence up. But really, the players that got the result against Brentford should be rewarded, and Garnacho was a massive part of that. Thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe. It's Saturday today, isn't it? It's Saturday. I'm losing the days in the international break. So basically, I'm trying to think what my day ahead is. I may well do a FIFA draft, which is on my Mark Goldbridge channel. I'm also tonight thinking of doing a Fury KSI watch along on That's Football. And finally, what else? We might do another video today. We'll see what happens today. It is the international break. There's not loads and loads to talk about, but we'll see what's going on. Happy birthday if it's your birthday. Yes, it's Saturday all day long, says Devils. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Even the prats who talk shit, at least you turn in and tune in and offer something. Always willing to have a conversation. And don't forget the tour. Get your tickets. They're going fast. It's going to be a fantastic night. We still haven't announced some of the things that are going to happen around special guests, etc. You'll want to be there. Our Christmas special show in Manchester. It'll be fantastic. Links in the live chat and in the video description, or you can scan it on your camera phone. I think it does work. In fact, I'm going to try it. Take care, everyone. I'll speak to you all in a bit. I can't turn it off.